Commission meeting. Happy Halloween to everyone.
I don't see your costume.
Show me my mask.
Here, there you go. Here we are, see? We have our costumes on.
It's definitely Halloween.
That's only because the executive director is not here that you're now.
He said to wear your Halloween
wants to
costume
wear a
and he
costume.
doesn't show up.
Maybe he's here and we don't know.
He's a ghost.
I know. I know he's on vacation, but he's certainly watching live. Hi, Bob. Okay, we have the reading of the meeting minutes of October 17th, 2017. Anyone wish to make any changes to the minutes, corrections? Make a motion, perhaps.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 17th as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Consent agenda. Any commissioners desire to have any of the consent agenda items taken off and placed on the regular agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 2, please.
Okay, item number 2 will then become item number 3 on the regular agenda. With respect to the remaining items on the consent agenda,
I hereby move that the Commission adopt the remaining items on the consent agenda as submitted.
Second the motion?
any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The regular agenda, number 1 is in the matter of the petition of Artesian Water Company for authority to establish a regulatory asset. That seems to ring a bell. And we have proposed order number 9125, Mr. Walsh.
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm happy to report that we have an agreed upon order, number 9125, docket 16-1001, Artesian Waters Council and Ms. Hillary for the Delaware Public Advocate worked with me in drafting an order memorializing the Commission's deliberations at the last hearing. Sets forth the brief history of the case and the whereas clauses, which I will not reiterate. But looking at the deliberation and the decision, we included therein first that the Commission acknowledges the DPA had argued that this was inconsistent with its precedents, and we noted as well some of the jurisdictions and their decisions that were argued by the parties, and we also made strides to put in the order that this was, while it was granting Artesian's petition to defer its legal costs in the emblem proceeding as a regulatory asset, it was not making a finding as to the amount of that asset or the time period for any such offset. Commissioners and Chairman have had an opportunity to review this, so I will keep it short and sweet. If there are any other questions as to any of the language, I'd be happy to address them. And I know that Artesian's Council and DPA are here. I believe that it properly memorializes the record and the last hearing in particular.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Randall.
Good afternoon, Your Honors. On behalf of the company, we believe that the form of order, as edited by all of the parties, is appropriate.
Ms. Iori?
Well, thank you, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. The Public Advocate did have the opportunity to review the proposed form of order and suggested changes which staff incorporated into the order that's before you. And with those changes, we believe that the order reflects what the Commission decided and recommend its approval.
Thank you, Ms. Iwari. Thank you, Mr. Randall. Commissioners, any questions?
Move we adopt order number 9125 as presented.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you all. Number 2, in the matter of the application of Delmarva Power and Light Company for an increase in electric base rates and miscellaneous tariff changes. There's a important motion and exhibits, interlocutory appeal, and a proposed order for number 9140.
Before this begins, if I may, we received this motion at 4 o'clock yesterday, and a letter in response to it objecting to this motion being heard today was sent to you this morning by Mr. Houghton, and that is based obviously upon the timing of us not receiving this motion until yesterday at 4 p.m. So if the commission has not had the opportunity to read that letter from Mr. Houghton, I think with all due respect it would be appropriate for you to take a moment to read that rather than just going upon a extremely late filed and quite frankly inappropriately timed motion that was set before you last night.
I have any objection to that request, Ms. Iwari? Read the letter.
Sorry, I was,
To read the letter from Mr. Houghton.
no, I have no objection.
Mr. Geddes. Yes, sir.
I should have worn a mask.
I do recognize you.
We don't object if that's the company's request, that the letter be considered.
I don't have a copy of it.
It was emailed to the commission. It was emailed to Mr. Howitt, who, when he put this on the schedule yesterday, didn't tell any of us he wasn't going to be here today. So, but I have copies that's unsigned because it was sent when I was on my way down here. So,
I can go make copies if the commission would like one.
We don't.
It's on my desk.
Of this letter?
yeah, you see, and this is, if you don't mind, this is part of the problem.
No, we're not.
No, it's part
we're
of the
not
problem,
going
Jim, and you
there.
know that.
The question is,
We're there.
I think your outrage is a little
I think we should just stop the talking. Ms. Iori's made a very nice offer to get copies for the commission. Why don't we just take a Halloween break and get out of our uniforms and get back to being litigants as soon as we have a chance to read. Pardon?
Oh, this was on our desk, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
But that's not the letter, though.
that's not the letter.
That's not the letter.
And it came to Bob.
I didn't see a copy of it.
Okay.
Lori's going to have a real good time trying to get all that down.
Looking for an order to 125
It's not the first time.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, could I make a recommendation?
No, you can't right now. We have Ms. Iori out of the room, so
Oh,
if you
sorry.
kind enough to wait
Okay.
till she gets back. It's just going to be a few seconds because the copy machine's right around the corner.
Does she have the code?
Now, I don't have a Halloween joke to pass the time away, so. I tell you what, Mr. O'Brien, do you have a special guest today? Why don't you come up to the front and let's introduce your special guest.
So, Chair, Commissioners, guess you'll be happy to hear that we're not asking for anything today. But I would like to introduce Aleda Sakaras to you. Aleda is our new Vice President and the business unit leader for the Delaware Division and the Maryland Division, which is another local distribution company in Maryland, as well as Sandpiper Energy, which is another local distribution company in Maryland. You remember Jim Moore. As some of you may know, he retired at the end of May after a long career, kind of off and on with Chesapeake Utilities, but he did, his last position there was as Vice President, the business unit leader. And after he left, the company promoted Aleda She comes from our affiliate in Florida, Florida Public Utilities. She started out there in March of 2011 as Director of Sales and Marketing, quickly promoted to Assistant Vice President of Marketing and Energy Logistics before she was brought up here as the Business Unit Leader in Delaware. Aleda earned her BA degree from Florida International University and her Master's of Industrial Psychology from the University of Texas, El Paso. I also just want to mention that she did celebrate an anniversary this year. 50 years ago, in 1967, she was on one of the freedom flights from Cuba as a little girl, and she has spent the rest of her adult life in Florida before moving here to our great state of Delaware.
You're,
Ready for winter.
you're moving up. You're moving uphill.
Yes. It's a little colder up here.
It is.
Check the weather forecast.
Well, thank you for allowing me, Bill, to introduce me. And so far, we have loved Delaware. The weather has been wonderful. My husband, Jose, and I have had an opportunity to, travel around. I loved all of the state parks, and it's been a really good experience so far. I hope the winter won't be too harsh.
I do note that you have a sweater. It looks like a sweater, a jacket of some kind on. So
It's cold in this room.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You should have seen what I had underneath.
that's okay.
Down bed, snow pants.
We welcome you and your husband to Delaware, and we wish you well, and we look forward to seeing you in the immediate future. But just so you know, we like that fellow to your right. He was a former attorney here and also former executive director. So you're in good hands with him. And as I said, welcome and come back and see us again soon.
Thank you. I'm very, very glad to be working with Bill and the rest of the Chesapeake team. They've been very welcoming, and thank you for the welcome as well.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Bryan. Okay, may we have about 2 minutes to go and read this letter from Mr. Howe. Ms. Iori and Mr. Geddes, did you receive this letter, correct?
I received it when I arrived here at the commission meeting.
Same here.
And have there been any discussions at all about the letter?
There have been no discussions about the letter, but I'm happy to address that in whatever comments you allow staff to make with regard to the petition.
If I could present my oral argument portion
Well, I
first,
think-
and then you could respond. I
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity to do that, Your Honor.
Well, let me think. You want to speak about what, Mr. Goodman?
We have a motion to strike this as moot, inappropriately filed, due process problems, but primarily it's entirely moot. We have agreed to this stay until you've decided the motion to dismiss. But there's more to it than that, Your Honor. But it should just, both of them, both the motion to stay and this interlocutory appeal should be dismissed as moot and inappropriately filed.
Okay, well, to be frank with you, just to be utterly honest, I must admit I have got some sympathy for Ms. Iori. And I don't know if you looked at what she said in response to Mr. Houghton's letter?
Have I looked?
Yes, have you read what she said in her email to Mr. Houghton?
I'm not familiar with an email. This was
It's
sent.
attached to the document you gave to me.
I didn't give it to you.
Oh, Jeannie, Ms. Iori gave it to me, excuse me.
What your counsel sent.
Again, I just told you I didn't see it until
Well-
I had only a draft.
Take a moment.
May I read over your shoulder?
Are you referring to the vacation?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then please let me speak because that has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, just one second,
Yeah.
please.
No, I too am very sympathetic to her vacation, but that's not what's at issue.
I'm not sure what,
All right. I'm not sure, having Ms. Iori look at the emails, I'm not sure what the chair was referring to. That was clarified.
It's just the issue of Ms. Iori's vacation, and I just had this vision of her not getting on the plane for vacation because the brief put her past the limits for her luggage.
Chair Winslow, with all due respect,
That's not
to
gonna
the
happen,
commission,
right?
that was never going to happen.
I understand.
I think I
No,
could
I think
clarify.
That
Mr.
vacation
Goodman,
has
Mr.
been
Goodman.
bought and paid for.
Okay, I apologize. I won't divert us anymore. I was intending to call on Mr. Geddes to sort of set this entire thing up. So I'm going to continue with start with Mr. Geddes. Everyone's going to have a chance, a full opportunity to talk and respond to each other, and we'll come to some sort of decision, hopefully, that will just put this thing back on track so that things are working as they should work without any inconvenience to Ms. Iori or anyone for that matter. Mr. Geddes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I actually don't believe we're that far apart, but unfortunately, the clock marches on, and we had limited options yesterday morning. And just to set the stage, I'm sure you're all aware that there is a motion to dismiss the application, which the hearing examiner considered. We asked him to send it to the commission directly, which he did, and it's scheduled for November 9th. That's the first sort of timeline that is important here. Based on the proposed schedule, which has been approved by the hearing examiner as well as the parties, the next round of discovery is due November 1st. With regard to some of the issues staff has had, which are enumerated in the motions, there is certain discovery which is still outstanding on the first round. And of course, there was a supplemental filing which occurred on October 18th. And so we filed a motion to stay on Friday, the 27th, in front of the hearing examiner, asking him to stay the proceeding and the requirement to file discovery tomorrow, in this case, until you had an opportunity to review our motion. And that's the status of the matter Friday afternoon. At 7:57 on Monday morning, the hearing examiner deferred the motion to stay. In essence, not granting the relief that was requested, i.e., please stop the proceeding until the commission has the opportunity to look at the motion to dismiss, which is a joint motion, and I understand how it's working. So the question is, what do? We believe that it was very inefficient for staff to have to propound discovery on a case which, in staff's opinion, I'm not going to argue the motion, has changed and no longer exists. But in any event, we were still obligated to file that discovery. And so rather than going through that useless exercise, we decided to file a petition 7 hours after the hearing examiner made his decision. Now, this is on our exhibits, but you can also look at the emails. And I know Mr. Goodman is going to talk to you about the emails. The company's offer, which is included in Mr. Howden's letter, originally was a 2-week extension. That's all it was. Now, you also have to understand, if you're trying to write a motion, you can't be answering emails at the same time. We had a 4 o'clock deadline to get this before you today, and we had to draft the motion and an order and have it before you in order for you to hear it today. I believe the Freedom of Information only requires 7 hours before your meeting, and that all meeting agendas are subject to change. So I'm not sure where Mr. Houghton or Mr. Goodman are coming from, that somehow this is inappropriate for you to hear today. But if you think about the fact that we had no other opportunity, we asked the hearing examiner to do something, the hearing examiner, in his wisdom, deferred it. That did not decide the issue for us. The only way we could stop the clock was to file with you. The company seems to think that because they agree that the clock stops, that it stops. It doesn't. The hearing examiner is the one who stops the procedure or changes it. And he decided yesterday at 7:57 the clock would continue. And so our only opportunity to stop the clock is to come before you. Now, the company agrees that the clock should be stopped. The only person who has not, the hearing examiner is the only one who seems to think the clock can continue until November 9th. All we need from the commission is some order, guidance, direction to the hearing examiner that the clock stops. Because if we don't file discovery tomorrow, we're in violation of the proposed schedule. This is the only relief we have. We didn't want to bring this relief before the commission. We didn't want to burden you with it. But if you think about the options we had no other option. And these emails do nothing to suggest that there is a resolution. And even if we could have a resolution, the hearing examiner at 7:57 yesterday morning said the case continues. So that's why we're here. We want the case to stop for 10 days until November 9th, till you can hear this motion, and then whatever comes out of that hearing, we will recalibrate. But between now and then, staff and the DPA and the other parties should not be forced to continue on a schedule that, as Ron Ziegler once said, is inoperative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geddes. Ms. Iori?
Thank you, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. I don't have much to add to what Mr. Geddes said. The only thing that I will point out is that because the schedule does continue, and because I am otherwise committed and out of the office tomorrow when the discovery is due under the current schedule, we did submit follow-up discovery to Delmarva before I left the office this morning. That having been said, we also put a caveat in it that our consultant had not had time to review the supplemental filing that came in 2 weeks ago, and the backup documentation for the testimony and schedules in that supplemental filing, which came in a week ago, I think. So
that was a fairly large supplemental proceeding. I mean, number of pages.
Well, we thought so, and we also have issues with what was not in that supplemental filing, but that is not before you today. All I wanted to say is that in my cover email submitting that discovery, I reserved the right to propound further discovery depending on what happens, on the supplemental filing, depending on, of course, what happens the Commission does with the motion to stay. Other than that, I have nothing to add to what Mr. Geddes said. Thank you.
Mr. Goodman.
Thank you. I'm trying to stay very calm. Wait, my turn.
No problem.
So I want to start out with with something that, and it's a quote, what I heard from staff here, which is, quote, "We did not want to burden the commission with this motion today." So let's go back and look at a couple things. First, I want to thank you for taking the time to look at Mr. Houghton's letter. I appreciate that very much, that you were willing to do that. Staff filed its original motion to dismiss on Tuesday, October 23rd, I believe was Tuesday, 24th. Sorry, October 24th. Then, without reaching out to Delmarva in any manner at all, they filed a motion to stay discovery on October 27th. Now, I'm not going to get into comments on what we think about the motion to stay. Look forward to having you see our response on that. I'm also not going to get into the fact that we disagree very much so with the allegations made about our responses to discovery. But the issue here is the fact that after filing the motion to dismiss, there was no attempt by staff or DPA to ask Delmarva if it would have agreed to a stay in the proceedings until the motion to dismiss is ruled on by this commission on November 9th. Had they reached out to Delmarva, the answer would have been, of course, that's fine. It should wait until then. In fact, when they did file it, we immediately said, no problem, we'll wait till then. Now, fortunately, we have an experienced lawyer on the commission, and Chair Winslow, as you know from your years of litigation experience, and you probably learned in law school, there's not a court in this state that would allow that to happen. You are required to reach out to opposing counsel and ask them, hey, can we get a stay in discovery until this is settled? That's just a fact. And you do not do that. You see if a discovery issue can be resolved first, and you don't dare take it to the court or the commission first. Had they done that, none of this would be before you. There wouldn't have been a motion to stay filed. When the motion to stay was filed, we reached out to them. It's not about Ms. Iori's vacation. We said, no, not only will we stay this until the motion to dismiss is filed, but we'll agree to push it back so you can have the time you need and maybe not have to deal with the motion to dismiss. It is that second part when Ms. Iori very correctly said, well, if we do that, it's going to get into my vacation issues. And, we didn't get back to addressing that. That involved resolving the motion to dismiss. What we're talking about here today is the motion to stay. So, look, there's three people who signed those motions, the motion to stay in the interlocutory appeal. And between them, they probably have 60, or maybe with Mr. Geddes, 70 years of litigation experience. No, not just you. I'm telling you, add it up, Jim. So that would be 40,
Now,
and then
now, you
5.
don't need to point out how old I am.
And then 5
You know
years.
how women feel about that.
27, right? You got to law school when you were 22. In any event, it was not appropriate. And so to say that we did not want to burden the commission with this, one phone call, and none of this would have happened. Then they go ahead and they file something at 4 p.m. yesterday and serve it on us at 4 p.m. I don't know when they filed it. We got it at 4 p.m. I think it was maybe 3:52 or something like that. 3:43. Let the record stand. It was 3:43, not 3:52. Last evening. It was wasteful. They wouldn't have dared try that in a court because you, Your Honor, you know what would have happened if they did it. So the entire thing is moot. And there's no doubt we're going to receive a bill for all this. All these filings. I'm going to get bills from staff's counsel. I'm going to get bills from my own counsel that helped us with this. And then we're going to hear from DPA that they don't want to pay, they don't want to put in rates our counsel fees. And I will remind DPA every time they say that a whole bunch of that is due to them failing to call and filing 2 motions. So both staff's motion to stay and the motion for interlocutory appeal should be dismissed. And finally, to try and blame this on hearing examiner Lawrence, again, I have no doubt that had we gone to hearing examiner Lawrence and say, we agree, let's just stay these proceedings until the commission has decided the motion to dismiss, no doubt in my mind, hearing examiner Lawrence would have said fine. But they didn't do that. None of these motions should have been filed after the motion to dismiss, and that's the problem here. So we ask that the motion to stay the proceedings be dismissed as moot and inappropriately filed, and we ask that the motion for interlocutory appeal also be dismissed as moot and inappropriately filed. You are being burdened with this, and you never should have been.
Well, I think I got this on my computer close to 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And I got the first physical copy of the document when I got here this morning around 10. But I'm not in a position to say that learned counsel for the staff or for DPA did anything inappropriate. I mean, they were under a gun and a deadline, and they made their best professional judgment. So I'm not in a position, nor have we, and I don't really, frankly, think there's a need to discuss it. They took what they thought was appropriate action under the looming deadline that they've discussed. And it's unfortunate that it came to this, but when the hearing examiner declined to hear the motion below and left it up to us, that meant today, didn't it?
Yeah, except that
today.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that it never had to get there. If they had asked us for this day,
I understand.
it would have been over.
They used their professional judgment. They decided it was because of the time situation and the resources that they have, that they had to get the actual document together so they could file it in a timely manner. And instead of calling you and perhaps you not being available, leaving a message and who knows what time you might get back to them, I'm not in a position to second guess their professional judgment on that. I'm just not. I think the Court of Chancery does things like this all the time, as long as the appropriate blocks are checked and there's proof. Injunctions are issued at the last minute, I think on a pretty frequent basis. So I would just like to get this thing back on track again. It seems like everyone agrees, and including, by inference, the hearing examiner. So how do we get this back on track? We're going to stop. I'm going to recommend to the commission that we, stop the clock until November 9th. But I don't want to do something or take any action without input from all of you. If we stop the clock until November 9th, does that solve the issue, or do we continue to have an issue?
From staff's position, that solves the only things before you is not the motion to stay.
Right.
Because that's been pushed off to the 9th. It's just the petition to allow us to get to the 9th. And if you stop the clock, however you decide to do it, we have an order that will do it, which basically the only paragraph in the order that really means anything, is the second paragraph of the order that says accordingly grant the stay of this proceeding pending the consideration of the motion to dismiss, as well as any other relief that might be required in this proceeding, including a further stay. So all we're asking is a stopgap 10-day stay, status quo for 10 days until the 9th, until you can hear the motion to dismiss and the motion to stay. The motion to stay was filed only to get us to the 9th, so I think it will be moved by whatever action you take here, but it's technically not before you. The petition before you is Exhibit C to the petition, which is the hearing examiner's 857 email indicating that he was not going to consider the motion to stay, and that would be deferred until, and to you, would be deferred to the commission and heard on the 9th. That's what we're seeking relief from. And just one aside, Ms. I already had 2 phone calls with Ms. Kohler, who is an attorney, outside attorney who represents the company. The public advocate, Mr. Slater, has had 2 or 3 calls with Mr. McGowan. I know that the executive directors had 2 or 3 calls with Mr. McGowan, who works for the company.
Mr. McGowan is a government relations person for Exelon.
He's our Vice President of Regulatory Affairs, and all those calls came after the motions.
Suggest that somehow we were not speaking is incorrect. And I think your observation is a fair one, because we didn't know what, if you look at these emails, you can tell that until 2:39 yesterday, they weren't really talking about extending the whole schedule in 2 weeks or whatever. We filed that motion an hour later. That motion was done, and the order was almost done as well. We just didn't have another option. And today, we probably could have solved it. But that wasn't an option either. We had a deadline of 4 o'clock yesterday, and we had to have that work done in order for you to even consider it today.
Any last words, Mr. Goodman?
Yes. I'll point out that we actually agreed and offered to go beyond the 9th when you're considering this motion. And just so my point is not mischaracterized, the original motion to dismiss was filed while we were in a meeting with staff and DPA talking about discovery. They could have right there said, hey, are you willing to stay this? And it is my position that that was the appropriate thing to do. And none of this had to go before you. So that's my argument. I'm not questioning their professional judgment. I'm just saying all of this was not necessary. And, it's a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted effort, and unfortunately, a lot of attorney's fees that are going to have to be paid by us. None of it should have happened.
Not by you.
Commissioners, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know that we're looking forward to try and resolve this, but I want to go back to October, I think it's the 18th. I heard you say that the party sat down to set the schedule and the milestone dates with the hearing examiner. So the question I have is, was the supplemental filing foreseen or forecasted when the original setting up the milestone dates and the schedule was in play?
No, Your Honor, and there was no motion filed by the company requesting permission to file the supplemental testimony, which was not a milestone in the proposed and accepted schedule. It was filed by the company on the 18th without any advance notice.
So is it reasonable, therefore, to assume that the scope and the volume of the supplemental filing is one of the key elements or parameters that has forced the need for more time?
That is one of the parameters, because there was no provision in the schedule to deal with any discovery with respect to it. If you look at Exhibit 3, I think it's C, to our petition, you'll see a schedule that Mr. Bowman, as one of the case managers, put together on some of the schedules that would have to be changed, and some of the it basically illustrates that the supplemental testimony was a lot more than supplemental testimony. It, in essence, changed 40% of all the schedules that the company originally filed.
No further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
May I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Again, I'll quote again. The supplemental filing was filed without any advance notice to the company. That's disturbing to hear. Before we even filed this case, we went out of our way, asked days before filing. We met here with staff and DPA and went over our case with them, so they would know before it was filed. And we discussed at length what we were doing, that we were filing, and I'll try to get my numbers right, that instead of filing a 3-month actual with 9 months projected upon filing, we were actually going to file 5 months, because we had 2 more months, and we know the commission wants more actuals that it can get, and that we would be filing a supplement, at which point that would include 8 months of actual. To say that they had no notice, it's amazing. And also, we told them the date that it would be filed. Unfortunately, in the negotiations on the scheduling, which took place between 2 people who aren't here, Mr. Howitt and Mr. McGowan, you heard about before, that date didn't get in there. However, when we knew it was going to be a couple of days longer than we expected it to be, Heather Hall reached out, and I don't see if any of the staff members to whom she spoke are here. I don't see Matt. Spoke to him and said, hey, I know... Oh, hey, Matt. Spoke to you, was at the technical symposium, and said, actually, it's going to be a day or 2 late. And I don't know what the comment was, but they knew this was coming. In fact, your minimum filing requirements specifically require us to file this. But you'll hear all this. You'll hear all this in response to the motion to dismiss, which you will see very strongly, we believe, is wrong in and of itself. But to say that they had no advance notice of this, I mean, wow, I don't know what to say about that. But you'll hear all this when we deal with that.
Thank you, Chair Winslow. I only have one thing to say. I am not going to say that the DPA had no notice that this was coming. Mr. McGowan did call Mr. Slater less than 24 hours before it was filed and alerted to him that it was coming, but that was it. So we had notice, but
Well, the commission's,
didn't know what it was until we actually got it.
So,
the commission's not going to get into that. This is going to be heard on November the 9th. So the only issue here is putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And everyone seems to agree on that, right?
yeah, our position is it's fine.
Ms. Trexler?
I have a question. Mr. Goodman,
Sure.
I'm reading through the emails and specifically Donna Culver's email on Monday the 30th, and she's using the term 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks throughout. And is that meaningful, or are you saying because the
Sure.
commission meetings are every 2 weeks? I mean, are you sort of saying the 9th because it's about 2 weeks, or are you really
Yes.
saying November 15th?
You got it. Actually, we said it would just be, we know 2 weeks is more than the 9th.
Yeah.
But we figure, but depending on your ruling on the 9th, we'll need a couple extra days to go back to the hearing examiner. If you don't grant the motion to dismiss the whole case, we'll have to reset the schedule, so we tacked on a couple more days. And just so you're aware, there were emails prior to that one attached. There were emails from Mr. Skaggs, Miss Culver's partner, who unfortunately is on vacation this week, which is why Miss Culver stepped in on this, talking about, hey, what can we do to resolve this? Do you need extension? So it goes back even beyond that.
So we're really focused on the 9th right now.
Sure. I mean, we offered to go longer just to give a little more time, but all along we've agreed that this shouldn't go forward until you rule on the motion to dismiss.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner have any comments to make or observations? Mr. Geddes?
Nothing.
I think we're, I don't know, I guess we should officially make a motion. Anybody want to make a motion with respect to the issue?
Well, we'd ask you to consider the order, but however you want to handle it, obviously.
Well, basically, Mr. Goodman's says that the order is okay. That's what
Well, no, I think some things in the order don't need to be in there. I think the order should say that, and I would be more than happy to provide you with one that just says, the hearing examiner forwarded this to the commission to hear on the 9th. Both parties agree that there should be a stay until your decision, and therefore that's what you're ordering. You don't have to get into the allegations in there about our alleged failure to comply with discovery. We disagree with that, and we disagree with a lot of what's in there. You don't have to get into that stuff.
Mr. Geddes?
Well, I think the order is accurate, but if and it's for your consideration, but if you'd like us to redraft it on a consensual basis with Mr. Goodman, we'd be happy to try to do that. The only thing we need from you is a directive to the hearing examiner that the schedule is stayed until the 9th. And we can paper it up afterwards.
I would suggest further than the 9th, because we'll be in here on the 9th and maybe a couple extra days to let the parties get together and talk about what would be appropriate, because I agree fully that Ms. Aory's vacation shouldn't be messed up. And it'll take a couple of days for us to find out what's good. So if you're going to do it now, you might want to do it until
No, you're
a little later.
Mr. Chairman, if you grant the motion, all of that's moot. So I would suggest, again, respectfully, our request was to have the docket stayed until the 9th. When you hear the motion, and this particular order also says, and whatever other relief you believe is appropriate. I believe that on the 9th you can craft whatever additional relief, if any, you think is appropriate. We don't need another couple of days. That will be confusing. We need this stayed until the 9th, until you hear it, and I'm sure we can work out whatever other details, if in fact are necessary. But if the motion's granted, those details will be required.
You're going to be here November 9th, right, Mr. Goodman?
No place I'd rather be.
We're sure.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you that day so we can resolve this. We'll stay until November 9th.
Thank you.
And would you guys get together and make a consensual order up that's short and brief and doesn't involve any argument of data in it, and we can just have it staged until November 9th?
I absolutely will, Your Honor.
Does that mean what everybody's...
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I also ask the parties to contemplate those nuances of unintended consequences on the calendar when you collaborate over these matters so that when you come back on the 9th, perhaps you can have a consensus?
Do you, just for clarification, you mean in the event that you decide not to dismiss, are you looking for a schedule going forward?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, on the hearing schedule today, we don't have anything on the hearing schedule. Is there anyone here from?
One from the consent agenda.
Oh, yes, I apologize. Number 3, just Commissioner Gray's matter.
Yes. Thank you. This is related to the application of Stream Energy Delaware, and is Shona Marshall? Yes. Hi, Shona. How are you? Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the summary recommendations that are coming across in the staff's memo related to this matter. And as I read through it, I was a little bit concerned where you state ongoing litigation costs, potential settlements, conclusion of 3 federal cases, et cetera, and so on. And then you say the potential impact on Delaware customers cannot be quantified. So I'm a little bit concerned about what you've discovered in this application as you put the recommendation on the table. So it is stated that the recommendation is we conditionally agree and approve this, but that we get reports. Submit summary updates on the subsequent filings. I'm just curious, will the reports or the updates simply inform the commission? Or will Delaware ratepayers be exposed to added operational or legal costs resulting from the outcomes of the pending litigation?
No, customers won't be exposed to the outcome of the litigation. Specifically, we would just be getting updates on what the conclusion of the cases are, what the filings are, to get an idea of what's going to happen. To see if we can maybe stymie any direct or indirect effect it may have on the customer.
So in other words, if I extend my concerns, this will not be a situation where legal costs and liabilities could accrue in the rates for Delaware customers.
No, that wasn't staff's concern. It was more along the lines of if, let's say they settle, there would probably be some reorganization required on their part that may affect the way they do business, or if they even operate in the state of Delaware.
Okay.
If they don't maybe have enough customers where it's,
Valuable for them.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, I understand now. Thank you. That was the only question I had, Mr. Chair. And
Want to make a motion, please?
I would like to move that this. Just a moment, please.
9137.
Docket.
Order number 9137.
Sorry. Okay, there it is. Yes, I'd like to move that order number 9137 is adopted as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Marshall. I believe I was asking if there's anyone here from the public that wishes to make any public comment. I'm not sure that we've ever had a public comment before. Maybe we have it once or twice, but there doesn't appear to be anybody here today for that. Director's comments, Mr. Hardigan.
Thank you, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. Just a few comments in Mr. Howitt's absence. The Delmarva Power, as you're probably aware, filed an energy efficiency docket a few weeks ago, or perhaps longer than that, with recommendations that came out of the Energy Efficiency Advisory Council Task Force. So we're having public comments on that docket on November 2nd in Newcastle County, November 8th in this room for Kent County, and November 9th at the Bethany Beach Town Hall for Sussex County. Our next meeting will be Thursday, November 9th, as you've already heard. As part of that meeting, we'll also have an evidentiary hearing regarding Delmarva Power's environmental rider. And with that, I wish you a happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more thing on the calendar which is a little unusual for those of you who are out there on the internet. Next year, I'm going to be the president of MACRUC, starting, I guess, June of 2018, which means that this commission has the obligation of hosting the Commissioners-Only Strategic Policy Conference in September of 2018. So that's probably not something that has to be on the public agenda, but just to be on the careful side, and in case someone had some unusual interest in what we're going to do at our strategic conference, they could attend, because we put it on as part of the public calendar. But rather than have it in this room here, where we don't need to be, because it's going to hopefully be a much smaller group, we're going to adjourn this part of the public meeting. We're going to go to the conference room in the other room. If there's anybody in the room that wishes to attend, they're welcome to. Or anybody out there in internet land that has any questions, they're welcome to give me a call about it. But this is really just planning for a conference that's going to take place in September 2018. It really doesn't involve any public business whatsoever. Thank you.